Welcome to the Grow with Glow podcast, the show where we explore ways to stay healthy naturally and increase your influence. I want to increase your leadership and your skills in business as well as at home. Today, we're going to jump into an interview with a really cool double belt world champion in the MMA world. Who I'm talking about is Dan Henderson, otherwise known as Hendo. Now, we did this interview in a really cool environment. It was his environment, the middle of the octagon. I sat in the ring with a good friend, Matt Treanor, who played pro baseball for over 20 years, 10 of which was in the minor leagues, and he established a phenomenal work ethic. And then the last 10, almost 11 years was in the major leagues playing catcher. Having that experience, I thought would be a great co-pilot for this interview. Matt being a professional athlete himself for 20 years, and Hendo, who was given beatdowns in his mid-40s to other fighters in the ring that could have been his children. He retired at the age of 47 after beating a fighter who was 26, literally 21 years older than the person that he fought in the arena. What I was intrigued by, and the reason I wanted to sit down with him, is his natural health approach, his use of chiropractic care, and also the longevity in the fight game. Physical, brutal, punishing. And yet, he went longer than most fighters ever will. Dan Henderson retired at the age of 47. He's now an entrepreneur. He's got a brew pub, a restaurant, a distillery, as well as a health and wellness center where he's committed to helping fighters recover from concussion. Look, on many fronts, this guy was intriguing. He was insightful, and in a very steady, calm, cold as ice demeanor, he answered these questions. I fully appreciate him giving us the time. His hospitality afterwards was second to none. And as a result, I've gone back to his gym every 90 days to provide health and chiropractic care to his fighters on his fight team. Dan Henderson is unique. He's one of a kind. And I think you'll see in this interview, there's a reason he was a world champ. It was his approach. It was his mindset. And the guy was unshakable. Matt Treanor and I sit down with Dan Hendo. Hey, everybody. We are inside the octagon here at Dan Henderson's gym, and I'm joined by ex-professional baseball player Matt Treanor and also Dan Henderson, who's hosting us here. Hendo, thanks for having us today.
Oh, no worries. Thanks for having me on.
I never thought I'd say I'd be in the octagon with Dan Henderson, so this is probably the only way I would do it.
This is it.
So we're excited to sit down and just talk about your career, talk about some of the contributions you've made to the fighting game, but also just learn more about you. And I think you've had a really interesting journey to where we are today. And as we do this, I want to kind of share some things with the listeners that'll maybe help them out in their health, their journey, even their mindset as we go through some things. So kind of to kick it off, I always like to do a little bit of a backstory, a little thumbnail sketch. I know you were born in Downey, California. Shortly after that, moved out here, and if you can kind of talk us through some of the early days of who made Dan Henderson in the ring before we get to the octagon and some of the things you're known for.
Yeah, I grew up wrestling. My dad was one of my wrestling coaches growing up, and I think started wrestling when I was 5 years old, up till I was 30 or 31 years old after 2 Olympic teams, and had another coach also other than my dad for my club wrestling. And, I think those two, my dad and my coach Bob Anderson, was kind of a big part of what made me who I am as far as being mentally tough and, obviously knowing how to. Most wrestlers kind of work a little harder than other sports, no offense.
None taken.
More cardio than baseball, I'll give you that.
But yeah, it's just a little bit tougher mentally. The thing you got to get in your mindset.
Yeah, for sure.
Of getting through certain things, and you're the only one out there. You can't rely on anybody else. I feel like that's what really made me into the guy that I became and affected how well I was able to fight in MMA.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll get into some of the championships, the Olympics, and some of that stuff, because that's obviously what people knew you for. But kind of going back to your family, siblings, did you have brothers that you would brawl in the house with on a regular basis? That was one of the questions Matt and I had driving over here. It was just because I have 2 brothers. Matt's got a house full of brothers. That was like a constant battle.
I have one older brother. He was a year and a half older, and he wrestled also. And we fought here and there, not a ton, but when I think he was in like 8th grade maybe. He got super big and his balls dropped early, and I was still a skinny little kid. So that's about when I started staying away from him for a couple of years till I got kind of caught up a little bit. But he was always bigger and stronger and just huge looking compared to me. I was the skinny little kid that was very good technically, but that was my style in wrestling
Right.
when I was younger. So yeah, I stayed away from him, but we would brawl a little bit here and there.
Right on. And then just give us a little backstory in home life. Your dad being your coach, obviously that had a positive influence on you, but just kind of what was life like in your house growing up, and what were some of the family characteristics that you took with you?
Yeah, my dad was a school teacher, so he was kind of with us quite a bit at the time. Mm-hmm. Pretty much on our schedule throughout the year. So, he was kind of a hard ass, and we'd, wake up and have a list of shit to do for the day. And, there's no excuses at not getting it done. So
yeah,
that's kind of how I was raised. There's, go out and play and do whatever you want, but not until you get your responsibilities done. Or if you stay out late. When I was in high school, I didn't really have a curfew, but I did during the season, but not after the wrestling season. But if I'd come home late, I'd still be getting up at 6:30 and doing shit around the house. So
yeah,
he'd get a kick out of if I stayed out too late. And
get to wake you up in the morning.
Yeah, it didn't happen that often because I knew how miserable I'd be the next day.
That's right.
That's that discipline we were talking about that maybe is lacking a little bit these days with the younger fellas.
Yeah, for sure. Just wrestling being one of those sports too, right? Like you've got to have that discipline in wrestling, and you're out there. There's nobody coming to save you. That mentality that you're the only one there and you've got to do it. A lack of discipline could lead to some bad things, obviously, when it comes to wrestling. But you had some great success in high school. Talk to us about that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I wrestled in high school, but I never did win a state championship in high school, mostly because I kind of got sick my senior year. But still, it goes to show that I was wrestled since I was 5, but competed and I competed year round in freestyle and Greco as well as collegiate during the high school season. But yeah, I enjoyed it, but it was tough to get out and do other things. And when I knew that I had wrestling practice or a tournament coming up, there's a lot of sacrifices that you have to make. And it was a good learning experience to kind of learn that maybe I sacrificed and didn't do something and still did bad in the tournament, but overall, if I wouldn't make those sacrifices, I wouldn't have accomplished what I did. I ended up, like I said, not winning a state tournament.
California's a big state.
Yeah.
Huge. It's like, and I'm sitting with 2 pro athletes, and one thing I've learned over the years is most pro athletes will tell you what they didn't do.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You'll tell you about the opportunity that you didn't, cash in on. It was the thing that got away from you. And it's notoriously a thread that kind of runs through all the greats is here's what I didn't do. So, kudos to you being humble, but that's usually what I see with the greats is let me tell you what I didn't do. It's like, look, you had a storied history. You are, by all accounts, one of the greatest fighters of all time. You definitely put up the greatest fight in MMA history. You were fighting at the age of 46 years old, guys in their 20s and beating them like soundly. So before we get too far off track, I'm going to reel this thing in real quick and just say the guy's a genuine badass. He just lives it. The fact that your dad was in and around your life on a regular basis, then you're a great testament to who he was because you're a super solid guy. And, his time with you certainly wasn't wasted. But anybody who follows fighting, the Octagon, MMA, we're going to talk a little bit about your Pride days. going to Japan to fight, like, to me, that's a whole nother level of commitment. So, I'm not going to let you go too far on what you didn't do. That's what all the greats tend to talk about, right? So, Matt and I did some homework coming in here. Of all the fights that you saw with Hendo, Matt, what would you say was one that stood out the most to you?
Well, I mean, the Bisping fight for sure. I mean, there's the names you fought. Sit here and list them. In fact, the beginning of the second Bisping fight, I believe Rogan rattled off all these names, and I'm sitting there thinking to myself, legend. And these are all guys you went up against. But to me, the way you carried yourself pre-fight and all this pressure coming from the other guy, Bisping's talking all this smack, all this stuff, and just to see that in the press conference, holding your demeanor and not just kind of flying off the handle and being this emotional wreck, and then to go out there and deliver and finish that way was to me, it was phenomenal. And I felt stoked, or whatever that excitement is for you, not necessarily just to watch somebody get pounded on. I was like, man, this guy, he kept his cool, he did his thing, and that's something that I look up to, because I'm an emotional guy. I'm Irish Italian. It's like let's yell and scream first, and then we'll figure it out, that type of stuff. So, but to carry yourself that way pre-fight and then go out there and do it, to me was pretty phenomenal. So, but also too, I mean, even the stuff you didn't do in the big light UFC or Pride, whatever, like the grappling at the end with John Jones and Shamrock and all this stuff. It's like, wow, it's very impressive to see, and also to see how you kind of laid it out for future generations. Like, hey, this is something you can do and get after, but that commitment level, the discipline, all that stuff, the end goal isn't just going to show up. You got to put it out there and do it. So
let's maybe jump in there too, because even with that, when someone's smack talking or has a tendency to run their mouth and you keep your cool, kind of talk us through that discipline a little bit of where you drew from, because you obviously are good with who you are, right? Like, you're confident, but to not come unraveled, as Matt was saying, like, to just be emotionally in check. Talk us through what that mentality is like for you, or maybe something that would help people listening, because I think that's a big part of it, right? Is like staying within yourself to then take it when it comes on fight day, as opposed to like spending all that energy beforehand.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing is in my book to be able to perform and be consistently good at what you do. You have to have that self-confidence, and that comes with the training that you've had building up to that point, and life experiences. Doesn't matter what it is that you're doing, those experiences will help you get that confidence, and without confidence you're never going to achieve anything. So being that confident in myself, when people would talk shit, just was like, okay, keep talking, I'll have my time, and
right,
I'll shove my fist down your throat. It's.
Do you think it's fake sometimes? Do you think that talking is like a false bravado, like the cat in the corner type of deal?
Well, I think some people need to talk shit, in order to build their confidence up, or talk themselves into being, I'm good, so I need it. And then some people also put on this mean mug face, before the fights, just to kind of get their mental attitude in the right way, where I'm happy-go-lucky and during the face-off and everything, but when I go warm up, before my fight, and as I'm walking out there, I'm enjoying the moment at the walkout, but when I go and warm up, my training partners typically hate cornering me or having to warm me up, because I'm beating you up a little bit, to
get ready
prepare for the fight.
Yeah,
like, I'm going to go out and fight, and I need to make sure that I'm ready to fight. So I would definitely get after it a little bit, and that's when I know that my time's on, but I'm still enjoying the moment walking out there. And when I do a face off in the middle of the octagon or cage, with the referee standing there, I'm usually halfway smiling with a smirk on my face, because I know that I trained my ass off for 2 months, 2.5 months, and now I get to beat you up.
Are you excited inside?
I'm a
ready?
little bit excited, and
Is it borderline nervous? Is that same sort of energy but directed in an aggressive way?
you know, I don't know if you can. I felt no nerves.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe my first 1 or 2 fights, never doing it before, but once I figured out that it really didn't hurt to get hit, it was nothing after that. I mean, no nerves whatsoever.
When the adrenaline goes away,
Yeah,
you feel it then maybe a little bit.
maybe. But yeah, I would attribute almost everything that anybody does positive to being self-confident in themselves. So without that, yeah, I mean, that's a big thing. And these guys that aren't very self-confident end up being the ones that talk a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So just real quick, so you're nice and calm. Now we're getting to the fight, and now it's on. You're getting fired up. You're ready to fight. And now the fight starts. And how do you direct that energy, that aggression, but still stay focused enough to stay with your game plan and still read your opponent and be able to counter and do certain things in the ring so that you don't get caught, but still have that aggression to where you're like, I am an animal. I'm a savage right now, and I don't give a shit if I get smoked right across my lips. I'm still coming. And that's, to me, when I watch your fights, you didn't shy away from anything. Like you were coming forward, and if you hit me, I'm coming. I'm still coming. And that was one of the most radical things I took away from a lot of your fights, was like being so, I don't say peaceful, that confident aura about you. And to me, there's a difference as well between being confident and cocky.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe overthinking some things.
Sure.
Yeah. But then how do you direct that energy from that aggression? Like, hey man, it's on, we're going. And then now it starts. What's that mindset? Are you just in like that training mode, like you're reacting because of your training? Or do you have that game plan that you're trying to achieve something during that match and you see it play out?
I mean, yeah, you have a game plan and you want to stick to that game plan. So yeah, the best you can. Obviously, sometimes the game plan goes out the window, especially if you get caught with something, and hopefully your coaches or your corner can kind of get you back there. But for the most part, even when I'm walking out to that cage, I'm thinking about my game plan. Even though I'm enjoying the moment, I'm also, my game plan's in my head. When I was backstage, before you're walking out, still visualizing certain things, how the fight's going to start, what I'm going to do at the beginning of the fight. And then obviously your experience and training is going to dictate what you do after the fight starts, depending on what your opponent's going to do. So, the more that you train different scenarios, the more you can react quickly and effectively. So, and that's like anything in life. The more you get trained at certain situations, the better you're going to be able to handle it, and the more confident you are with yourself. So
that's that discipline word, right? It's the pain of discipline or the pain of regret.
There's that weird spot as a young guy. I went through these issues as a young guy, not kind of wandering on my own, trying to make my own decisions. I made a lot of bad decisions, but that confidence comes from that, I think, understanding your training or the discipline, the way you live your life. And I think sometimes there's that disconnect of that false bravado or that cockiness where you've skipped the discipline part. You haven't done your work, and not even just in the fight world or baseball or whatever it is, but in life in general. Yeah. And then your shit goes off the rails and you're like, what happened? Somebody screwed me, that type of stuff. So, and I look back at a lot of what I did and the things that I didn't do, like you were saying.
Right.
And a lot of it was a lack of confidence at certain times where I'm in the big leagues now. I should take a step back instead of saying, I'm in the big leagues. I'm one of these dudes. I'm here. And so going back to the fighting thing, that's a different element to where that we talk about fight or flight and the way it affects your body and all that stuff. But when you come in the octagon, there's nowhere to go. And, all that training, you could train all your life, to do certain things, then all of a sudden it's not there for you. It's just not clicking. So going back to fight plan and all this stuff, is there any things when you were in the middle of a match where you're like, hey, listen, this isn't going good, I'm going to flip this completely, and it worked out for you to where you're, well, I can't believe that happened, and you're walking away with your hands up over your heads?
I don't know. I mean, I'd have to give that some thought on some of the fights, but I mean, I know that there was one fight in Japan where I got clocked right off the bat from like an overhand right, and some of the guys one guy that I knew over there, American guy that had fought this guy before, told me, watch out for that, watch out for that, watch out for that. Same punch, watch out for that overhand, and go out there, and it's in my head, watch out for that overhand, and next thing you know, I get caught with it because I wasn't focused on what I should do. I was focused on what he might do to me, and that was a mental mistake that I think a lot of people get into, is this guy could do this, so I need to maybe, I need to watch out for that, and then that's what's in their mind when they're walking out to fight or to go play their sport.
Yeah,
instead of focusing on what they are going to do.
Love it. Focus on what you can control.
Right, and you're not controlling.
I'm sure you've had that. Man, watch out for this curveball. Watch out for this whatever.
And then you take it 3 times in a row, or swing at it because you saw it and it's in the dirt. Oh,
right.
You told yourself already.
Yeah.
But I think that goes to a key word Dan mentioned a minute ago, which is visualization.
Yeah.
Right. So when you're locked in, you visualize the ideal self. And when we're not confident or maybe off our focus, then you're worried about what they're going to do or what the opponent's going to do or what the environment is. And a lot of this can be outside of sports and metaphors for life. But, the idea is if you're focused on the negative and you're looking for it, a lot of times you're going to find it. Right. It could be a overhand right. It could be a curveball. It could be something in business. But it's like, hey, if you're looking for the negative and that's what you're focused on, you could find it. But when you said walking into, steel cage and you're locked in and you're focused on what you're going to do and you're visualizing that, well, then that plan came through. And then kind of to your point, Matt, we were talking about like when he's in fight mode, Hendo went through people.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like, you're known for like the steel chin, and you definitely took some big hits. I watch guys be in full mount on top of you and you never stopped. And then also like when you would drop that right, people knew it was coming and they still couldn't stop you. Talk us through that a little bit. Like when you were locked and loaded on that thing, heavy right, and it still came through, like not only did you hit people, but you followed through, like you knew it was on. Like we were talking about watching the videos and just going, oh my God, like I can't watch those fights before bed because I get too juiced. What is that like to experience it?
Well, I mean, obviously, especially mostly when I go out in public and do things, most people say, hey, thank you for knocking out Michael Bisping, or that's the fight.
There's a lot of people.
And I'm like, I don't know what to say other than I enjoyed it more than anybody. But, and yeah, to your point, or what you said with everybody knew that I was going to do that and throw that punch, and I'd still hit them with it. Maybe I got lucky and they were thinking, don't get hit with that, don't get hit with this, watch out for that. And it happened to them too, instead of focusing on what they should have. And I typically, when I have negative thoughts come into my head, I replace them right away with a positive.
Say that again.
Awesome.
Say that again. Yeah. It's huge.
And that's with anything. Any negative thought, I just replace it with a positive thought right away. Whether if I'm thinking, I gotta, hopefully he doesn't do this or what, and then I'm like, well, what am I gonna do instead? What am I gonna do? And then I focus on my beginning, or what I'm gonna do at the beginning of a fight.
Is that something that you've done all your whole life? Like, is that something like when you were a kid, maybe getting to college, you're like, hey, I'm going to replace those thoughts with something positive?
No, I don't. I started doing that, I think, during my fighting career a little bit. But I mean, I was always a positive guy, regardless, always self-confident. But, occasionally those negative thoughts would creep in. Mm-hmm. And, even later in my career, they would creep in, but I'd get rid of them right away. And kind of first, you just got to recognize that that's a negative thought. And then, what's a positive thought to replace it with? Instead of what's a guy going to do to me, I'm going to replace it with what I'm going to do to him.
Sometimes I'll mumble under my breath, cancel. and then I'll put in the positive thought. Like if I have that negative thought come in, I'll just go cancel, and then I'll think of the positive. But that may be like a huge soundbite for people listening. This is a double champ telling you when negative thoughts come in, you got to replace them with a positive. Like double champ giving you life advice. It's like, that's huge, because we all have those moments of self-doubt, but don't feed into it. Don't let it grow beyond a moment, and then cancel, replace it. What's the positive thought? What's the visualization? What is my game plan? And like you said, that first fight with Bisping, the announcers were like, he can't keep moving left. He can't keep moving left, because he walked right into your right. And then like when you flew through the air and dropped that, like,
should have had a cape on there.
That was awesome.
No, I think I talk about this with younger players, and I didn't start realizing that same thought until I was done playing. But that negative thought, you reinforce that action. When you think negative, you're reinforcing what you had just done. So take, for instance, I tell kids on the tee, you hitting the ball, boom, right off the back net, perfect, boom, boom. You hit one terrible, it's like an emotion saying, oh, that was terrible. But your brain is going to remember that, and you're going to repeat that. So I wish I would have learned a little bit about that positive, like reinforcement. And it's not being cocky. It's like, I have trained. I can hit a fastball. I can catch that guy, or, I can take this guy, that type of stuff. But I think that's huge to take away, that replacing that negative thought. The reason why I asked you if you did that in your everyday life, because I could imagine like somebody seeing you driving around in your truck and just wants to, I'm sure you get guys like that all the time, want to stand up to you or say something stupid to you. It's like, oh.
Not usually.
Yeah, well, if they know you. Yeah. But at the same time, it's one of those things where it's like being able to understand the situation, even if you feel terrible. All right, this is going on. Recognizing it, and then almost self-diagnose, and then move on. Boom, I'm out. So that's awesome that you did that when you were in the ring.
Through your career, I mean, you wrestled in high school. That's what you were kind of known as. And then we get into the octagon, and you were dropping these heavy rights, the inside kick, dropping these heavy rights. But also in the Olympics, I remember as a kid watching you doing the Greco-Roman. Like you were willing to step into disciplines where you were a rookie. You knew very little about it, and you managed to excel in all different parts to then have this array as a disciplined fighter. And you fought up until the age of 46, again, against dudes in their 20s, which at some point in this interview, I want to come back to performance, because that just blows my mind that you beat these guys and you were sometimes 15 years older than your opponent. But just talk about being just kind of a rookie or new to a discipline, and then being willing to take mistakes, fail faster, and then eventually become a master with it. What does that take to try something new, even though you could have just stayed with a strength, but you were willing to open yourself up to try something different?
Well, I mean, growing up, I wrestled Greco and freestyle as a kid. They don't have the Greco so much anymore for kids, but I wrestled Greco and freestyle growing up and never wrestled college or high school style until I got to high school. So that was a little bit new and a little bit of a change. But the biggest new thing and change was when I went into MMA. And for me, I had been wrestling Greco so long, and most of your training is kind of redundant and trying to do exactly the same thing, but just a little bit better or a little bit different. So you're drilling a lot on doing the same exact thing. And it wasn't as exciting as when I first started training MMA. There's so much stuff you could do and learn, and I was constantly learning new things, and and then after learning all these things, I started kind of the wheels started turning to how do I encompass that into my wrestling style, and eventually, and there was no MMA coaches when I started.
Right.
There was boxing coaches, there was kickboxing coaches, jiu-jitsu coaches, and wrestlers, and I kind of put it all together for a sport for myself, and then I guess learn the hard way on what worked and what didn't work sometimes.
When you wrestled in your first Olympics, was that the first time the Olympics had Greco-Roman wrestling?
No.
Okay. Was it
Greco's one of the original
the
Olympic
originals?
sports, yeah.
Okay. And was it the first time the U.S. had a Greco-Roman team?
No.
Okay.
No, that was the first year that I was on that level of wrestling. I never wrestled internationally at that age. So in the open senior level, I never wrestled internationally before. It was all. So I think I made the team. I was 21, so I kind of was wrestling in the age groups up till then, and then made the team after training. Going to Russia to train a lot.
There's a lot of Olympic coverage on you. I felt like for that particular Olympics because of the Greco-Roman, and I know that goes back to Greece, and that's one of the oldest versions, but it seemed like, it may be kind of to Matt's question earlier, is like, the development of MMA and the octagon, a lot of it has to do with pioneers like Dan that took this kind of fighting and that kind of fighting and put it together. And here it is now kind of on a main stage. We talked about that driving over here, just how important having a pioneer in a sport is to basically break through with certain things. What would you say from Dan's early career to now, how the sport has kind of grown?
It's crazy. And that's some of the things we were kind of hitting on before, was even just the training aspects of it and all that stuff. But 94 is when 95 was my first spring training, and I was telling Dan earlier that we were watching videos, and this is nuts. Look at these boys get after
videotapes.
It was video VHS. Yeah, there was none of that digital stuff around yet.
Yeah, definitely bootleg.
Might be dating myself a little bit, but no, it's just interesting to see how it's developed in the way probably no other sport really has. I mean, football over time, the rule changes and all these different things, but to me, MMA has come together and gelled into this perfect point where people are accepting of watching, like a Friday night fight that's on ESPN every weekend. 20 years ago, maybe even a little bit less than that, you wouldn't even think that would be available. But to me, it just gives so many more options to a lot of guys that train their whole life, get out of college. And even if you're an elite athlete at the college level, how can I continue? I see this in baseball too. Guys would just want to keep playing, not necessarily to drive the Maserati, that type of stuff, but they love the game. They love, I could imagine too, as a wrestler or jiu-jitsu practitioner or somebody out there, like, man, I want to keep competing. And if there's nowhere to go, what do you do? So, but to see how it's developed into what it is today it's extraordinary, to say the least, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Many people would say the greatest MMA fight ever was you and Shogun Rua.
Yeah, that was a good one. That was that was a little bit tougher than I was hoping on or planning on. But
holy crap, he's a big boy.
Yeah, no, it was, and I think it was a lot more exciting for everybody else that was watching. And for me, I was out there and I kind of knew that I beat him up for 3 rounds pretty good, almost finished him, and then kind of got a little tired in the fourth round. And even, and the last round, he had me mounted most of the round, but he wasn't hurting me, and I knew that there's no way he would finish me. He was so tired too. He was, barely had anything on any punches. So for me, I just knew that I had already beat him up and I was winning the fight.
Right.
And so it wasn't all that exciting, like, oh, what's going to happen? Because I knew he wasn't going to finish me. Everybody else didn't know that, I guess. So they got all worked up about nothing.
So you were 41, 42. At that time, he was like 28 or 29. So if we can, I want to jump into some of the performance stuff. Like, what are things you do outside of training? What are some of the things you do for rest, recovery? Like, what have been some of your longevity secrets? Because you did it forever. I'm sitting next to Matt Treanor, who played pro baseball for 20 years, more than half in the major leagues, but nonetheless, the journey through the minor leagues is 20 years. Like, that's a long time. And some of the fights like that you did in Japan were tournament fights, 2 fights in a night. What's the most number of fights you've ever done in a night?
3.
Jesus.
3. Yeah, that was definitely the toughest night of fighting I've ever had.
Holy shit.
And I tweaked my knee in the second fight, so my MCL got popped and tore a little bit. And
so boxers, there's like 6 months between fights, and I'm not downplaying it. That's a amazing sport in and of itself, but like 3 fights in a night, that's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, most of my career, I had 3 fights in a year after that.
Right.
But it wasn't that big of a deal to me. I mean, if you think about when I first started fighting, I thought I was only going to do this for like a year, and then go to chiropractic school or be a chiropractor. We talked about that. And
Say that again, just so everybody perks up in there.
So
if you weren't going to be a fighter, what was your choice?
I probably would have went to chiropractic school.
Yeah, I didn't tell him to say that's the truth. What school were you going to go to?
I was going to go to LACC. I was accepted and decided not to go because I
decided to kick some ass instead.
Well, I decided to try to make another Olympic team.
That's awesome. We would have
and then I found MMA.
That's
instead
awesome.
of chiropractic school.
So we would have been at LACC actually at the same time, which is pretty wild. So we were talking about this off camera. I said, dude, you have to mention that. Like, for the chiropractors listening, like, it is the coolest profession, second to MMA. Welcome to Grow with Glow, the show where we explore ways to stay healthy naturally and grow your influence. Today's episode is brought to you by Element, the clean salt electrolyte drink mix with everything you need and nothing you don't. There's no sugar, just the essentials for optimal hydration. Whether you're an athlete, busy professional, or just someone who wants to stay hydrated, Element is designed for you. So what sets Element apart? Well, it's the science-backed formulation. You see, Element is created by experts who understand the importance of electrolytes like sodium, potassium, and magnesium in maintaining proper hydration and supporting overall health. These electrolytes are crucial for muscle function, energy, and anything that makes Element stand out is its commitment to real, clean ingredients. You won't find any artificial sweeteners or flavors in here. Element is keto-friendly, paleo-friendly, and suitable for a variety of dietary preferences. And here's the best part. For our listeners, Element has a special offer. Your first purchase through the website and the link below in the show notes will get you an offer where a complimentary package is sent with the purchase of your first item. So again, use the link in the show notes, and when you make a purchase, you will get a complimentary pack at no extra fee. You're going to enjoy it, and again, it's paleo and keto friendly, keeping you hydrated. So outside of the fighting, rest, recovery, what are some of your health hacks? Can we put chiropractor as number one?
I did have a chiropractor
I love it.
that helped me for years, until he couldn't get any movement out of me because my body got a little bit tight.
I could understand that.
Yeah.
So let me just make a short list. Chiropractor number one. Cool. All right, we're good. What else did you do?
Obviously, nutrition and diet's super important. Especially during training camps, I would, definitely eat a lot cleaner.
Give me a couple specifics. Like what would you do away with?
Well, you get rid of, I usually just got rid of the fatty food, the cheeses and less butter and everything on stuff. But I would just eat a lot of fish and chicken and vegetables and salads and stuff like that. Occasionally, red meat also. It's not like I didn't eat red meat. I'm a meat eater, so.
Yep.
But during training camp, I would clean it up a little bit in that way, and then obviously stay away from the ice creams and stuff like that.
What about when you went up in weight? It
didn't matter. I mean,
you just kind of ate what you wanted.
Most of my fight career, I fought light heavyweight. Most of my fights, I think. I don't know which one I fought more of actually, but I fought some heavyweight and some light heavyweight and some middleweight. But I typically would weigh in for like a light heavyweight fight. The weight class is 205. I'd weigh in 203, 204, whatever. Just that's what I weighed. The last time I fought light heavyweight was against DC, and
oh really?
And he's a big boy.
Yeah, he's big.
And I weighed in at 199, just because I had just got done fighting. I think I fought Shogun for the second time in Brazil, and I was still in Brazil, and got a call from Dana saying, "Hey, you want to fight DC in 7 weeks from now?" So I said, "All right."
Jeez. And
got right back to training. So my body didn't get a chance to kind of get chubby again. And
right.
So I was real lean and in shape, ready to go, but DC wore me out. He's a big boy.
What was he back then, 230?
Well, the weight class was 206, but he said fight night he was about 228, 229.
So your walking around weight is close to that 205, 200.
I walked around 202, 203.
It's crazy to me to see some, like I ran into Chuck Liddell I didn't say hi to him, didn't shake his hand or anything, but I was just amazed at how big this guy is. And he was fighting at that 205 weight class. And I mean, I'm not great with weights, but I'd say he's well over 225, and he's not short, and he's got these long arms.
You're talking about now?
Yeah.
Yeah, now he's probably a little bigger than that.
Yeah, and this was at a NASCAR event earlier this year, and
no,
I was like, holy cow, this guy's huge.
Yeah, I think he would get up a lot bigger. Him and Rampage is huge too.
Right. And you fought Rampage, right?
Yeah. I didn't fight Chuck, though.
No.
But, yeah, I was actually scheduled, when I fought Rampage, it was, I was scheduled to fight the winner of him and Chuck. So
okay.
That was my first fight in the UFC from after Pride.
What was it like fighting in Japan, where you probably knew very few people when you got there and just going all in?
Yeah, it was, the crowds were different. That they're a little bit more mild and quiet, but at the same time, they understood the sport better than most other countries then. Now everybody's a little bit more educated about it, but they would applaud and cheer and all at the same time during the grappling part too, like ooh and ah, everybody at the same time. And they definitely got a lot of energy into the cage, or I was fighting in a ring, but they got a lot of energy out there that I felt. And even though you can hear your coaches super easy, because there's, you can hear a pin drop sometimes, and then next thing you know, everybody at the same time, never hear them boo about anything. They were very respectful to the.
So would you say that was very similar to fighting in Brazil?
No, Brazil. I got you hear them chant, "You're gonna die, you're gonna die."
We were talking about this earlier. It said when my wife Misty, she was playing volleyball over there. They were great. They loved volleyball, but once the match started, they were in that court. Boy, they didn't care if they were women. They were ragging on them hard. And tough crowd.
Yeah, that's definitely another sport that Brazil loves is volleyball and MMA. Yeah, so I could see that.
So back to this recovery stuff. I wanted to know, obviously, win, lose, or draw, you're going to be sore after a fight. And
depends. Honestly, I probably wasn't sore very often the last 10, 15 years of my career.
Nice.
Like,
just you're used to it.
Yeah, I was just, my muscles were in pretty good shape. And I had a circuit that I would do mostly during training camps that, I do a lot of reps, and my muscle endurance was pretty good, and it was hard to get me sore.
Give us a little breakdown. Give me some specifics.
I would do 100 rep set. Like there was probably 13 or 14 exercises on the circuit, and I would time myself.
100 reps.
And I would get the weight to where I could do about 60 to 70 nonstop, and then I'd only get a 10 to 15 second break, and then I have to get to 100 only with one break. So you have to have the weight kind of correct, and you time your whole workout, and I think my best time was like 19 minutes and something, like 14 exercises.
Give me 7 you can remember.
Full body, I could look at it right now. That's my whole circuit.
So we're in your gym in Temecula, and this is how you train fighters. So anybody interested, get out here.
Start with my abs, and then pull downs, shoulder press, leg press, a row, a bench press, leg extension, leg curl, biceps, triceps, shoulders, and then the little girly innie outie thing, the yes nos. Whatever you want to call them.
Good for your hips?
Yeah, I mean, definitely good, especially, I think it's great for MMA and being able to side to side and also in holding someone in your guard, I guess, and getting, there's a lot of those movements that you'd be surprised.
So 100 reps, and you'd obviously have to play with the weight, but you would do those 14 exercises timed. And when I'm nodding my head as you're saying that, it's not that I know anything about it. I'm just admiring it.
It's a tough one, like I've had some of my guys try to do it, and it's tough for them to get anywhere in the 30-minute range. But it's just one of those things that once your muscles get in that type of kind of endurance shape, it's different than doing bench press and trying to get your max out of something. And that
beach muscles.
Yeah, that doesn't really help you after the first 30 seconds, you know.
Right. You
got to make sure that you can go. And when I was fighting in Pride, you know, my first Pride fight was 2 10-minute rounds. You know, it's not like every 5-minute
all
rounds.
Endurance. So you would train endurance, and then even talking about your eating, like just getting rid of some of the dairy. That's an inflammatory process in the body. We always say with protein, if people want to clean it up in general, these aren't specifics, but in general, the less legs, the better. So fish have no legs, chicken have 2 legs. Limit the red meat because that can have an inflammatory process too. But the idea is there's a leaner way to eat, and then you're training for endurance. And on some level, all food has an inflammatory process in the body on some level. But it sounds like you intuitively pulled out some of the really bad stuff for recovery. And for you to say like the last 10 to 15 years, you weren't sore after a fight.
That I would have thought it would have been the opposite.
Holy crap.
Yeah. That you would have been more sore.
Well, I can say that I had sore spots. Like sometimes, knots on my head or something like that in my face. But
checking out your hands. Your hands are busted up a little bit.
My muscles never got sore. I mean, now I get sore doing yard work.
Right.
So,
it's just impressive. I mean,
it is.
And again, to be fighting, mid-40s against guys that could be your sons, and whooping them, it's just like, shit, man, there's got to be something more to it than just good genetics. And obviously.
Well, yeah, I mean, I definitely had good genetics, but, I definitely, I was low in testosterone and got athletic commission approval to start
the TRT, right?
TRT for a little bit of my career, and and then once they said no more because people kept abusing it,
right?
They said you can't do it anymore, which kind of sucked for me because I'm out there making sure that I'm doing it correctly and testing myself on my own just to make sure that I'm always within limits, and when I quit, I didn't notice that big of a difference, and I wasn't doing that much of it, but it definitely helped.
Right. And then when you stopped taking, because you were doing the TRT, testosterone replacement therapy, what did you kind of supplement it with, or what did you substitute it with, or what did you do to make up for that gap?
When I quit, I just quit cold turkey. And
cool.
Yeah, I think back to the mental attitude, most of things like that, I didn't really notice too much. Mm-hmm. And it just mentally, I mean, I'm going to get out there and get it done. And that was my attitude.
Yeah.
I'm going to get out there and go train. I did, before I did retire, one of the biggest things of why I decided to retire wasn't because my body felt beat up. It was more about laying on the couch after practice and not having the energy to go and hang out with my kids and, take them places that they need to go to.
Sure.
So I was kind of missing out on some of the family things, or wasn't able to do it, or just didn't do it because I was tired. And
there's nothing more exhausting than fighting.
Mentally, they're talking about that fight or flight, just, get worked up, and a little bit of a spat makes you feel like you're crying all day and you're exhausted, and can only imagine adding the physical element to that with striking people. And I do sport jiu-jitsu, and it's such a different thing. I feel weird even talking about it, but you get done, and it's like that's one of the great things about it is you feel like you just let everything off your chest. But then again, I'm not in a cage where I'm going to get smashed and all that stuff, so there's that safety there. But I can only imagine, like, you must have had a team of, like, maybe a massage therapist, a PT on call. Hey, I need you, or that type of thing. Or
I had a massage therapist. I would get, during training camp, massage twice a week. My typical massage was probably 3 hours long.
Just grind it out.
Yeah, and I mean, it was a female that kicked ass. She was really good.
Yeah. You do anything like cryotherapy or that type of stuff when it started coming out?
So yeah, and we actually have, now it's connected to my gym. It originally was in the gym when it first started, but a place called The Lab, where they do a lot of the hormone replacement, and there's a cryo chamber in there, a saltwater float tank in there, float pod, and then they do IV therapies and all sorts of different things as well. So the cryo machine was in my gym for a while, probably the last couple of years of my career. So I would do that quite often, and
Pretty
definitely,
effective.
yeah, it definitely helped. It helped increase circulation and just, which does help with recovery a little bit.
That's also helps with thyroid issues for people. It'll help testosterone counts. Lifting heavy things. It sounds very basic, but that's a good testosterone builder people can do.
Right.
Cryotherapy will stimulate the thyroid, which also balances hormones. So I think those things too are really cool for people listening. Like if you want to take control and do some stuff natural. What I love is, as we pulled in today, you could see it's attached to your gym.
Right.
You have fights here. When do you typically do those?
I've been doing about 4 a year, about every 3 months. So next one's coming up in a month.
Right on.
Yeah.
How many fights do you have in a night?
I typically have about around 10. So
That's awesome.
12 would be kind of the ideal number, but
Right on.
I think we're going to have 10 fights. And sometimes we have kids pancrase fights, like 2 or 3 of them in either the intermission or at the beginning. We throw the kids in there, give them a little bit of experience, a little love from the crowd, and it's pretty fun to watch.
That's cool.
As well, but
that's cool.
Pretty savvy crowd. You get a whole range of people.
Yeah, some of them are my gym members, but most of them are from just anywhere from in town. Some of them drive from out of town, but and obviously a bunch of family members of whoever's fighting is here as well to support. But yeah, it's a pretty good crowd. We usually get 400 to 500 people.
That's awesome.
It's awesome that you can kind of. This facility is amazing in itself, but to be able to open that up to young fighters and get them some experience and fight time I think is huge.
It's huge. Are we allowed to talk about what's happening on the other side of this wall with the restaurant, and the bar, and
that's a big project I've been working on for years now. Because of COVID, it kind of got slowed down, but it'll be a brewery, distillery, restaurant in the same building my gym's in. Part of it will overlook the gym.
That's awesome. So basically, just outside of where we're sitting is a loft that people can sit, have a beer, and watch these 10 fights. I would say we're about an hour straight east of LAX. So if people wanted to come out at some point or make it part of a trip, it would be worth it. But talk about the brewery and distillery a little bit. What's going on there?
Yeah, I mean, we're back on track. Construction's started, so we're hoping to be open within a few months. And obviously, craft beer and craft distilling is kind of right behind the craft beer world, where a lot of people are getting more in tune with that and liking some pretty good alcohol that way. And the whole place will kind of be more of a sports bar, country bar, steakhouse feel to it. So
country bars.
When Brad was explaining it to me before we came out, it reminded me of those places in Texas that you go eat bitchin' barbecue, and then right outside you watch the bull riding. I mean, literally, there's a ring, and you watch the guys ride bulls.
That's funny.
So I thought that when he was telling me about this place, I was like, no way, I gotta go check it out. So,
That's
I
cool.
can't wait to get here. Was it December 10th? You said?
Yeah, that's the next one.
Yeah, I'm gonna be here for sure. Check it out. Bring my buddies.
And then what is the beer and distillery? What's the brand we're working to look for?
Well, the restaurant's going to be called Hendo's Barrel House.
Yes.
And then, I think it'll be Hendo's Brewing and Spirits will be the alcohol brand. I'm sure we'll have some pretty cool names
Right on
there for some of them.
Hendo's Distillery, it'll knock you out.
Yeah, damn.
But
Got an emblem yet?
That's right.
The H-bomb.
That's it. What I love is you've kind of mixed all your passions, your brilliance, and also your hard work. So we've got the restaurant and bar, which is shaping up beautifully, distillery and brew house. So we've got ales that are going to be sipped on while people watch the fights, but it's done the right way. I would tell you everything that you're doing in this gym is like just super impressive. And then also you've got the health side in the same facility. So it's like looking at all these passions lining up. One of the things we admire about you is just kind of tying in after fighting. You didn't lose your purpose. Like you kept talk a little bit about how important the word purpose is for people.
Right. Well, I mean, for me, I just, obviously I didn't want to sit around doing nothing, but, I love coaching and I don't, I get in here most days during our pro practice and I still don't get in here enough, but mostly because I'm busy working on this project and it's been kind of a battle of getting it done, but still staying on focus and trying to visualize when it's going to be done. So I mean, it's it will get there.
That's right.
And I have all confidence in being able to get it there. But yeah, and it'll be a pretty cool little.
It's going to be
spot.
super cool.
I'm hoping to learn how to do a lot of the stuff myself. Brewery. I'm already pretty good at cooking, but
I follow you. I follow your Instagram. You're definitely good at cooking. Like some of the barbecues you put on, bro.
Yeah, I know those are good too. It's tough to go out to eat sometimes, and some of the stuff you get isn't nearly as good as
I could have made it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but I don't know. But I'm hoping to be able to brew some good beer and distill some good alcohol as well.
I'll be ready to taste when you're
That's
ready.
right. No, I love it. Just kind of tying all those things together. Your passions and what you have going on in here. When these fights occur, you're here almost every time, right?
No, I've been here every time. Yeah,
Right.
For sure. I make sure that when I schedule it, I'm here. So
if people want to come out and see the fights, taste the product coming out of the kitchen, see what the health stuff is all about, you're guaranteed Hendo will be here on fight night. Probably 50-50 Matt and I will be here.
Probably more like 99-1 that I'll be here. I got to work it out with my schedule too, but now that I have December 10th locked in, I'm going to go home and put in my reservation. So
Right on.
I'm excited for it.
So Matt doing jiu-jitsu knows a lot about what's going on in the fight world, more so than I do. Just as we kind of wrap this thing up, man, give me some final questions for Hendo. What would you want to know? I know, take it anywhere you want to go because we've been pretty stoked to do this interview for a while.
My biggest thing coming in was to see what you were thinking, because everybody, I'm sure you've done a million interviews and everybody's talked about every fight and probably should be a book or two written about it. But
I am in the middle of getting a book written.
Attaboy. I mean, you should.
Yeah, I'm writing it with somebody. So
do an audio version and you read it.
That would be cool.
I like audiobooks when they're read by the author. There's a different flavor to it.
That's right.
But your mental attitude is kind of what I was thinking about. Like, what made you good? Because a lot of what I do, I don't go out and coach, private lessons and do all this stuff. And for me to coach, I did it a couple times, a couple seasons at the junior college level. And it was nice. It fit into the schedule. I was home by 3:30, picking up kids, doing all this stuff. So it worked out. But my goal, my purpose, I guess, after I left baseball was to try and teach and give something to the young players. And what I deduced was that a lot of what I learned was after the fact. I went through it and I grind through it. There were some ups and downs, but what I wanted to give to the next generation was the things that I struggled with. And a lot of that wasn't necessarily the physical. It was the mental makeup, the discipline you talked about early. And a lot of what I was lacking, I don't want to say, I was one of 8 kids, so I don't want to say I got lost in the shuffle, but I was number 4. So I was kind of left to my own devices when I was in high school. I had a direction I knew I wanted to go into, but it wasn't locked in. I was just given a bunch of money at 18, and I blew it all in 2 years, and that's probably the most learning experiences I had. You learn through tough experiences.
Right, for sure.
So listening to how, if somebody was to listen to this, a young athlete or even just anybody really, just understanding that mental focus, that discipline to get up off the couch, make that first move. You can't get into shape if that's your issue. You want to lose weight, you get into shape. You can't get into the gym if you don't get your ass off the couch. So it starts with one easy step. And so looking back at what some of the stuff you were saying about your mental approach, even just the way you knew the presser was going to go to your pre-fight workout, your walk up, the whole thing, you already had it mapped out. So mentally, it was all part of the game plan. So going back to what I was hoping to get from today, I hope nobody missed if they listened to the whole little interview or whatever we want to call this here, is that your mental mindset is paramount to your future success, in my opinion. And there is some nuances to that too, like your backstory, your upbringing, where you came from and stuff like that. But in reality, if you can understand where you want to be and that end goal, and then start breaking it down into these smaller things, that stuff that happened in the past it's not going to affect that process that I've already mapped out, or I shouldn't let it. There's always going to be obstacles in the way as well, even for the most successful people.
That's what I was going to say. It all, and I didn't mention it, but you kind of said something about it, is it all starts with setting a goal, though. You're not going to get your ass off the couch if you don't have a goal.
Right.
If your goal isn't to go get in shape, if your goal isn't to be good at anything physical, you're not going to get your ass off the couch and do it. Physical or mental, it doesn't matter. Set yourself a goal first, and then make those sacrifices to achieve that goal. And sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's not so easy, but
you can't give up first time the speed bump hits you.
For sure. And that's where eventually you would learn to be mentally tough, to not give up. And I couldn't tell you where or how I became this way. I think a lot of it was instilled in me as I was growing up and getting older and competing from 5 years old until 46 years old. I became, at some point in there, pretty mentally tough. And I've coached a lot of fighters, a lot of wrestlers, and if they're already kind of in college age, it's really tough to teach mental toughness. They kind of, I believe it starts with your parents and or some of your coaches, as long as your coach has a little bit more leeway with your parents. Nowadays the whole generation and parents get all butthurt about coaches telling their kids something, when it's a good thing for them to hear sometimes, that to get your ass on and work harder.
Mm-hmm.
Don't make excuses for your own kid when he's the one that should be working harder, And I think that's a little bit of what's going on with nowadays, which makes it different.
Totally agree. Everybody, it seems like everybody not everybody, I shouldn't say that because that generalizes everybody, but a predominance of the people that I've worked with, the end goal is this MLB / Division I thing. But with, like you were saying, that's the end goal, but there was nothing set up beforehand.
You got to definitely set smaller goals.
You can take the session. Somebody can come in here and do a workout with you, but that doesn't mean all of a sudden you're proficient in what you do. You have to continuously do it. And I don't see that. I see that in a smaller amount of the amateur athletes that I see nowadays. Whereas when we were kids, we didn't have access to year-round stuff or access to private coaches all the time. And, these weird things like, if you pay more money, he must have some better information, this weird mentality of it just happens because I want it to happen. It doesn't work that way. And you're a living testament to grinding it out, and forget about the belts and all the, the lights and all that stuff, but to fight and do what you love from just what you said. I was thinking more or less that 92 Olympics to the finish of your fighting career. But no, it's 5 years old, and to do that and carry that passion until you were in your mid 40s, and it's not done there. Look, we're sitting in the middle of an octagon in your place, with all this stuff. So for me, the more I learn about you, the more intriguing you are as not just a fighter, but as a person. And that was one other thing I kind of wanted to get to, is that, hopefully there's some college athletes or some athletes coming up that can understand something that I kind of grabbed from you, but you didn't say specifically. The discipline and the work and all this stuff, and this is something I struggle with as well, is your value as a person isn't based on your performance as an athlete. So like when that is done, your career is done, you're done in college. Now it's not, I got to start over. I got to find a new me.
That's definitely a common, I think, thing among athletes when they retire, pro athletes when they retire. What's my worth now, or
that's almost verbatim what I said to myself. And it was almost like, what I had invested my whole life. I didn't go to college. I didn't do all that stuff. But for the normal person too, like I do this with myself, with my kids. I discipline them, you know, don't do that, go to your room, whatever, get your stuff, get in the car, we're out of here. And then I see my kids are like, you know, they're in trouble. And then all of a sudden, oh, did I do the right thing? Was I overboard? And then I asked my wife, who's a sweetheart, we play good cop, bad cop, right? She's like, no, that they needed that, you know.
I was going to say, she's tougher than you, bro.
But
when it comes to sports and discipline, like she
turns it off.
She's on, yeah.
So you got a lot of those characteristics that make people great. I see there's a commonality there.
Yeah,
well, yeah.
I think what I see in both of you guys too is that you loved the process, and I think that's important for people. It's not when you get the belt then you'll feel good about yourself. Like, you love being in here at 5 a.m. You love.
Well, I don't know. When I retired, everybody said, "Oh, do you miss it? Do you miss it?" And I said, "Well, I miss the competition a little bit, but not the preparation."
Sure.
I mean, so I don't think I loved being up in here busting my ass. I just knew that if I didn't, I might as well just not do it.
And I think that's key too, though. Not every day is fun, but you got to do it, right? You got to stick to it because you made the commitment. Sure. And even when you don't
have to make it fun enough for you to keep your interest, for sure.
And usually if you don't feel like doing it in any sport, I played lacrosse in college, like after 10 minutes of not wanting to do it, all of a sudden you're happy you're there. You know what I mean? Like, you just got to get through the first 10 minutes of it, and then all of a sudden, like, that switch gets flipped and you're like, all right, I'm here, I'm into it, I'm going to do it. But, you know, kind of my message maybe for the listeners is happiness is the way. It's not a destination. It's not like when I get to D1 or Major League Baseball or the belt, then I'll be happy. It's like, no, you have to be into the process enough to get through the sucky days, because that's true of anybody. And you got to embrace that work part of it to make it fun. It doesn't have to be the best, but you have to make it fun. And then casually, absolutely. Hendo mentions, oh yeah, I'm writing a book too. It's like, we got a restaurant, we got a brew pub, we got a distillery.
I got a guy helping me write it, you know, so I could sound halfway intelligent. But yeah, it should be, we're almost done with it.
When's that supposed to be coming out?
I don't know when it's coming out. I know that it's, I think, just getting finished right now. He was in the last chapter this week or last week.
Yeah, that's
so soon, hopefully.
Yeah, fight fans. I'm sure a lot of people get out of it.
And the funniest thing is, you know, I was like, you know, he actually came into my world because he was kind of doing a documentary on CTE and stuff like that for pro football, and you know, came and interviewed a couple MMA guys, and then ended up doing another documentary on boxing, and then one in MMA about CTE. But in that process of meeting me, he wanted to help write a book. And I'm like, well, I don't know. I mean, I don't think I'm not that exciting. I'm kind of a boring dude. And
I'm sure you got tons of stories.
Yeah, and then, you know, he's just, you know, when we're kind of getting through he's asking all sorts of questions. It's like, you know, holy shit, dude. This is so exciting. I mean, but it's exciting to him, but I don't know if it's exciting to everybody. But
well, you lived it.
Yeah, but to me, I lived it, and and I know that I've done a lot of things in my life that most people don't get to do, traveling wise. But almost all of it was through wrestling and through sports and fighting. Most of it was wrestling, traveling I mean, I was in Russia when the day they broke up. I got there that day and stayed for 4 months and turned 21 there during that trip, you know, and then came back 6 months later, made an Olympic team.
Jeez.
But I had been there 12, 15 times in a 2-year period, dropping out of school. Mm-hmm. So sometimes dropping out of school works out for you.
Yeah. This would be one of those times.
That's right.
Yeah, life lessons instead of school lessons, I guess, yeah.
I think it's huge. A couple words I wrote down were purpose. Definitely seems like you have a purpose. The process, you're committed to the process. And I think if we put a third P on that, it would be profits, but that's not to say money. There's different currencies in life, right? So if you have a purpose and you're committed to the process, the outcome is you're going to get more of the things you want. And not every day is payday, and not every day is the day you win, but you stick with it long enough. And then just to see you transition that into business, into, you know, what you're doing here in the gym, and then just listening to both of you guys talk about giving back to the sport. and knowing Matt pretty well, I've seen him do that a lot too. Just give back that love to the game. And what I love that you said is the earlier you start is almost easier.
Well, to teach somebody certain things, if they already have, it's hard to break bad habits, and it's a lot easier to start with a clean slate, and teach them the right way the first time. Unfortunately, not everybody has that person in their life that's a good enough coach to do that. And another reason why I think I did really well with my wrestling and my coach sent us to Russia to learn how to wrestle better. It wasn't like, hey, I'm going to teach you everything you need to know.
Right.
Because he recognized that, he was a great coach, but technically he didn't know everything.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't the best at that. Go out and learn shit and bring it back here, and then we'll make you ready to use it.
That makes him a good coach too, being open-minded to
absolutely
helping his guys.
Yeah, and not being the one that limits you.
Right.
Being able to go beyond that.
Right.
Yeah, and just this idea too that one day I'll start this, or one day I'll get off the couch. What you were saying earlier, Matt, is just instead of saying one day, just flip those words and just make today day one.
Right.
I'm just going to start, and just be willing to be bad, and then you get better through the process. And
well, I mentioned goals and setting goals. I didn't really go into that too much, but you got your goal for the day, you got your goal for the week, the month, the year, whatever, and then your ultimate long-term goal. And, and once you reach that long-term goal, hopefully you've already set new ones already,
right.
Yep. But it all starts with achieving that daily goal.
Right.
Or the hourly goal of getting out of bed early, whatever,
Yeah,
to
totally.
Start working out, going to the gym 3 times a week is my goal.
Right.
Now you're going to the gym and you want to do something better or get stronger at something.
Right, it's not a chore anymore. It's just part of what you do.
Goal. Make a game out of it too. Yeah.
You're gonna go get your nails done. Go into the gym.
And maybe that's it. Not that you love the process, but you make a game out of it. Like you find a way to get through that process of it. So, all right. What final questions do you have here, my man? Lay it on me. Give me one more for Hendo.
10 minutes
Come on.
after we get down the road, I know I have about 30, but
yeah.
But this was good. I definitely want to give you my personal thanks for taking the time. I think I was telling Brad last night a little bit, or was it yesterday? I got adjusted. I said, people like you need to be celebrated.
Yeah.
You need to be out there, and not in this weird like rah rah rah. But dude, you went out there, you did it. You're a living testament to grinding it out and banging it out, and the way you carry yourself too. I think maybe that attracts me to that. People, we have all these energies with us, and sometimes you just bounce off dudes, like our energies aren't clicking. But the way you go about your business and watching your past performances and all stuff, nothing but respect for you, and I appreciate you taking the time just to sit down. And I'm praying that people will listen to this, especially younger people that are starting to go through that grind, that high school, junior high-ish type thing, where you're starting to figure out who you are, you don't know who the hell you are, and giving yourself some guidelines and taking some of the stuff that this guy has told you, because we said this a little bit earlier, experience comes with failure. I don't know if we said it exactly like that, but if we can eliminate failures to that next generation, just keep making everybody that much better as we go along. So thank you for that.
Oh, no worries.
Yeah. And thanks for sharing some of the inside stuff on health and the routine, and the fact that you are going to be a chiropractor. I think a lot of listeners are going to get a kick out of that. Super cool. But even sharing some of the routine of, what makes you great and just being disciplined to do it.
I don't know. I know I am completely happy with my whole career and what I've done, but, I don't consider myself great. I just consider myself a normal dude that had an abnormal job.
Which is why we want to celebrate you, right?
Yeah,
it's just like,
because
it's that, workman's mentality, going to work, pick up your lunchbox and get to it. That's not often seen these days, but we totally appreciate it. And we've been watching footage of you for a while and getting prepped for today. And I think maybe the trash talking before the Bisping fight, and then taking care of business and just kind of a nonchalant, I'm a normal guy in an abnormal world. I think that comes through in all you do. And for that, we're really grateful to have sat down with you today. So Dan Henderson out here in Temecula, California. I got Matt Treanor to my right, and this is one of my better days on planet Earth too, buddy. So thanks for taking the time with us, man. I really appreciate it.
No worries. Thanks for having me.
Hey, if you enjoyed this interview, please do us a favor. Click subscribe on YouTube. We are Grow with Glow on the YouTube channel, as well as Dr. Glow DC with Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. So if you get a chance, follow us there. You won't miss any of these other interviews. And if you have something nice to say, please put it in the comments. And like your mother told you, if you have nothing nice to say nothing at all. But we do appreciate the shares, the likes, and the comments. Keep it coming, and I'll keep bringing you some world-class information from world champions. Hendo was phenomenal, and a quick and sincere shout-out. Thank you, Dan. You're amazing.